6-year-old girl and her father were shot by a North Carolina homeowner after a basketball rolled into his yard. That's according to Queen City News in Charlotte. And a manhunt is underway for 24-year-old Robert Louis Singletary, who is considered armed and dangerous. He's accused of shooting 6-year-old Kinsley White and members of her family. Now, Kinsley, she's okay. She was treated for gunshot wounds to the face and released from the hospital overnight. Singletary was previously arrested in December for assaulting his 21-year-old girlfriend with a mini sledgehammer. So Kinsley White's father hospitalized, but not, I think, in danger.
Yeah.
But they're all, concerned because this man, the suspect, has not been apprehended. So it seems that some other kids were playing basketball and a ball rolled into his yard. He comes out, guns blazing, and is on the run. He is being charged as well, in addition to those charges, for wrongly possessing a firearm as a felon.
Yeah.
And he was in the midst of being prosecuted for this.
The attacks on his girlfriend.
The attacks on the girlfriend.
Yeah.
So he had not, I think it had not gone to trial yet, or he had not pled. He had not submitted a plea in the case.
Yeah, so
yet.
Apparently he moved into the neighborhood within the last couple of weeks. And this seems like one of these kind of unprompted, they're calling them like rage shootings. It feels a little bit, it feels like they're getting increasingly erratic. Increasingly sporadic. Like if the first one is Ralph Yarl, where a boy rings a doorbell and the homeowner shoots him through the front door. And the second one is, it might be mixed up the order of events here, the two cheerleaders who went to get into the wrong car. No, the second one was the group of friends at night who turned around in a driveway. Someone comes out of their house and shoots someone who was in a passenger in the car. The third one is a teenager who thinks they're getting in a carpool in the wrong car, realizes their mistake, gets back in their own vehicle, and the owner of that car gets out, walks up to their car. They roll down their window thinking they're just going to apologize, and they get shot as a consequence. And now this fourth one is a group of kids let a ball roll into a yard, a homeowner comes out or a resident comes out shooting and ends up shooting an unrelated family that lives on the street, hitting both the parents and grazing the cheek of a young girl. It feels increasingly erratic and attenuated from any kind of stand your ground law or anything, especially since this guy seems to be a felon or had this kind of criminal activities in his past and unlawfully owned the gun in the first instance.
Because some of these other incidents had a racial context that was being commented on. I should note here that the suspect is a black man. The family, the gunshot victims are white people. Well,
wait a minute. Only one of these stories has a racial component. We haven't been talking about the kids.
I didn't say we. I said the.
No. But it's worth that. It's not. I don't want to. All of these. It's not as though these are all stories that the public has been talking about because there's a racial component. But this one has a black perpetrator.
No. Just in the yard.
Only one of these stories involves a black victim and a white perpetrator. The second story, the driveway story, involves all white people. The third story involves a Latino perpetrator and what seems like at least one mixed-race cheerleader and one white cheerleader, one half black cheerleader and one white cheerleader. So it's all over the map. So this isn't. I don't. There's racial subtext to all kinds of things, but what groups these stories together is the idea of rage attacks, not race.
Sure, and also, what groups them together is we happen to have covered them this week, but that should not suggest to anyone because we'd have to do a statistical analysis. Crime, horrible things happen every day. It's a big country. There's a lot of crime. It's a bad, unfortunate reality. Just because we covered a number of these incidents this week doesn't mean they were actually more likely or more prominent this week versus last week. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. As I've noted before, I know from looking at, for instance, hate crime statistics and some other things of that nature that I've reported on, that actually ideological, politically motivated killing in this country is not a very big category. We pay a lot of attention to acts of violence where there appears to be a discernible political or ideological goal, but angry neighbor does something violent, workplace violence, spousal violence, and organized crime are by far massively more likely reasons for violence than I disagree with you politically or I have a discernible ideology. We focus on those, but what we're seeing here, this is more responsible for crime overall.
Yeah, the Louisville bank shooter was. Yeah, it was a workplace violence instance where he went in before work and shot a bunch of his colleagues. This is from NPR. They spoke to Allison Anderman, who's a senior counsel and director of local policy at the Giffords Law Center to prevent gun violence. They asked her about whether there was any trends that we can identify here. She says rage-induced shootings are on the rise, though still relatively rare, and it's difficult to track because these kind of shooting reports largely come from media and survey data and law enforcement statements, and there's no national repository to really be able to track it with more scientific accuracy. Although when asked why more people seem to be increasingly provoked to these kinds of shootings, she points to, quote, a confluence of factors over the last few years, including an increase in gun ownership, a steady weakening of gun laws in many states, and the gun industry's narrative of fear that encourages people to arm up at all times in self-defense. And that last point, at least, seems to be the case in the Ralph Yarl shooting, which was the first one with the boy, the 16-year-old who rang the doorbell and was shot through the door. The shooter's grandson has now come forward saying that his grandfather is racist in his view and has traded in some of these racist conspiracy theories. Don Lemon recently spoke to the grandson of that suspect, Andrew Lester, who has pled not guilty in that case. Let's watch some of that interview.
Do you believe your grandfather is racist?
I believe he holds racist tendencies and beliefs.
Why do you say that?
He's just a stock American Christian male. It's older, that's just how they are. It's the conspiracies and weird random racist things they say, and it doesn't make sense, but they're just scared.
Now, listen, you're generalizing a lot here about, you said older Christian white males, but what do you mean by that? What do you mean they're scared? Talk to me more, please.
It's just I feel like a lot of people of that generation are caught up in this 24-hour news cycle of fear and paranoia perpetuated by some other news stations. And he was fully into that, sit and watch Fox News all day, every day, blaring in his living room. And I think that stuff really kind of reinforces this negative view of minority groups and leads people to be it doesn't necessarily lead people to be racist, but it reinforces and galvanizes racist people.
We also wanted to, I'm sorry, did you want to react to that?
No, go ahead.
We wanted to do a few other updates since we did end up covering a number of crime cases this week. So the cheerleader that was shot is currently recovering from surgery to remove her ruptured spleen, which sounds awful. But that's the update in that case. So,
yeah, look, it's difficult. I understand why Don Lemon would be interested in talking to Mr. Lester's grandson because it does confirm, I think, what a lot of people on the broad left think about some of the rhetoric that you get from some conservative outlets that does seem to heighten people's fear. He spoke specifically of an interest in, quote, QAnon-level conspiracy theories, saying he used to make disparaging comments about black people, gay people, and immigrants, that he kept a large number of firearms in his home, including rifles and handguns, that he was interested in election denial, that he watched Fox News a lot. The 24-hour news cycle of fear and paranoia, he says, from right-wing networks influenced his grandfather.
Well, this is kind of what I'm talking about. We're going to closely scrutinize this guy and his views and how his inclination toward violence developed. But then we have three other incidents where...
Well, I think it's completely fair to note that the last shooter has a history of violence. He has beaten his girlfriend in what sounds like a really brutal attack, and that he's a criminal on the run. Is that not a relevant part of his background to bring up in the same way that
and are
this
his
person's...
political views relevant? Is he racist against white people? Who cares?
Well, I think that someone having a history of violence is relevant to the
I
motive.
think that is certainly relevant, yeah.
Wait a minute, is relevant to the motive of why you would randomly shoot a bunch of innocent people. I also think having suspicion and paranoia of Black people in particular would help people to understand why you would shoot through your glass door at a 16-year-old who did nothing other than ring your doorbell. Yeah, I think it's clarifying context to help us understand why this might have happened. Now, it might be the case that this man allegedly, according to his grandfather, having a long history of saying disparaging things about Black people, having a lot of guns in the home, had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he shot a 16-year-old Black kid in the head and then shot him again when he was on the ground and then declined to offer him any medical assistance so that the Black kid had to go to 3 other houses before he was able to get taken to the hospital. Maybe those things have nothing to do with each other. And maybe the fact that this most recent shooter brutally attacked his girlfriend and was a felon has nothing to do with the fact that he brutally attacked his neighbors and shot wantonly, injuring a 6-year-old child, narrowly missing, grazing a 6-year-old child's cheek with her bullet. But I think all of these things are relevant to discuss.
Well, we certainly hope for justice in all of these cases. Tomorrow on Rising, Jason Nichols and Amber Athey will be bringing you Friday's news, so give that a watch, trying out some new potential hosts. Bree and I will be back, of course, next week. Hope to see you here.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And for those who like to listen while you're on the move, we are available anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can't miss us.
Bye-bye.
See you later.